Have you ever noticed that some people seem to pull information out of you almost effortlessly? You sit down, start talking, and suddenly you are sharing things you did not plan to share. But with other people, even people you know well, the conversation stays flat and surface level no matter how hard you try. What is the difference? Most people assume it comes down to trust built over time. And time does matter. But here's the strange part. Sometimes you open up to a stranger faster than to a friend you've known for years, which means something else is driving it, something more immediate. The real mechanism is simpler than most people expect. It's not about how much someone knows you, it's about how they treat your words the moment you start speaking. Think about the last time someone genuinely listened to you, not waiting for their turn to talk, not glancing at their phone, not immediately jumping in with a story about themselves, just listening, actually tracking what you were saying. It feels rare, doesn't it? And because it's rare, it immediately signals something. This person is safe. Dale Carnegie noticed this pattern decades ago, and it holds up. He described how Sigmund Freud was remembered not for his brilliance in conversation, but for his listening. People who met him described the quality of his attention as something almost extraordinary. He was mild, calm, low on gestures, but completely focused. That focus was what people remembered, not what he said, what he made them feel while they were talking. Carnegie himself tested this accidentally. He once spent an evening with a botanist, asking questions and listening attentively for about 45 minutes. At the end of the night, the botanist told someone else that Carnegie was one of the most interesting conversationalists he had ever met. Carnegie had barely said anything. He had mostly just listened. The botanist remembered the experience as stimulating because he got to talk about what he cared about, and someone actually wanted to hear it. That is the hidden mechanism. When you feel genuinely heard, your brain stops being defensive. The guard comes down. Sharing feels less risky because the person across from you has already shown they will receive what you say without immediately redirecting or judging it. Now here is where it gets interesting. Most people believe that being interesting in conversation means being a good talker, having good stories, smart observations, witty replies. But Carnegie's insight flips this completely. To be interesting, be interested. Not performatively interested, actually curious about what the other person is saying and thinking. The conversation becomes memorable not because of what you contributed, but because of the space you created. There is a line from Disraeli that cuts right to it. Talk to people about themselves and they will listen for hours. That sounds like a social trick, but it is actually just a description of a basic human need. People need to feel that they matter, that what they experience, think, and care about is worth someone else's attention. When you provide that, they open up. When you don't, they stay closed. There's also a related pattern that shuts openness down fast: hijacking. Someone starts to share something and the other person immediately links it back to themselves. You mention your difficult week at work and they're already talking about their difficult month. It happens constantly, often without malice. But what it signals to the speaker is that their thing was just a bridge to the other person's thing. And people stop crossing that bridge. The fix is not complicated, but it is harder to do than it sounds. You let the other person finish. You ask a question about what they said before you contribute anything of your own. You resist the pull to match their story with yours, not forever, but long enough that they feel their point actually landed somewhere. Carnegie described a sales representative who lost his voice before a major meeting and had to sit almost silently while executives talked through his product samples among themselves. They ended up talking themselves into a deal worth over $1 million. He had not persuaded them. They had persuaded themselves because someone gave them the space to think out loud without interruption. That example sounds extreme, but the pattern shows up everywhere. A mother who stopped lecturing her teenage daughter and started listening instead found that their relationship changed quickly. The daughter began to share on her own. Nothing else changed externally, just the direction of the words. There is also the question of sincerity, which matters more than most people think. You can sense when someone's interest is fake. Most people are surprisingly good at detecting it. Hollow compliments feel hollow. Performed attention feels like a transaction. What actually opens people up is genuine curiosity, when you ask something because you actually want to know the answer, not because you are running a technique. Carnegie drew a sharp line between flattery and sincere appreciation. Flattery is vague, obvious, and collapses under scrutiny. Genuine appreciation is specific. It notices something real and names it. A teacher who recognized that a blind boy had extraordinary hearing told him so, clearly and specifically. That boy eventually became Stevie Wonder. The point is not that appreciation creates talent. It is that being genuinely seen by someone changes how safe you feel around them, and safety is what produces openness. What makes someone feel safe enough to share is not one single behavior. It is non-judgment, patience, real curiosity, and not turning their words into a runway for your own story. These are all different versions of the same signal. What you say matters here, and you will not be dismissed or redirected or judged for saying it. The interesting thing is that you don't have to be especially warm or extroverted to do any of this. Freud wasn't performing warmth. Carnegie said almost nothing to the botanist. They were just in the presence of someone who made space for them to exist fully in the conversation. That is the whole mechanism, and it is more available to quiet people than most of them realize. And here is the broader insight worth sitting with. The conversations you remember most fondly are probably not the ones where you were most impressive. They are the ones where you felt most understood, which means the person on the other side of those conversations gave you something genuinely rare, their actual, undivided attention. If you find this kind of thing interesting, subscribe. There is plenty more to explore.